Hi guys, welcome to the next video, firewalld for Red Hat systems. In the previous video, we looked at uncomplicated firewall for Ubuntu systems. In this video, we will first verify the status of firewalld. Then we will learn about firewalld zones and services. We will add pots to a firewalld zone and look at firewalld rich language rules. Let's start by verifying the status of firewalld. There are two ways to do this. We can use the -- state option of firewall CMD. We can see the state as running. Or if we want a more detailed status, we can just check the daemon, the same as we would any other daemon on a systemd machine. So run this command, and you will get the detailed status. The next topic is firewalld zones. Firewalld is a rather unique animal, in that it comes with several pre-configured zones and services. If you look in the user lib firewalld zones directory of your CentOS machine, you'll see the zones files all in .xml format. So let's enter this directory. Then list all the files. Each zone file specifies which ports are to be open and which ones are to be blocked for various given scenarios. Zones can also contain rules for ICMP messages, forwarded ports, masquerading information, and rich language rules. For example, the .xml file for the public zone, which is set as the default, looks like this. In the service name lines, you can see that the only open ports are for secure shell access and for DHCP v6 discovery. Look at the home.xml file. You'll see that it also opens the ports for multicast DNS and the ports that allow this machine to access shared directories from either Samba servers or Windows servers. The firewall-cmd utility is what you would use to configure firewalld. You can use it to view the list of zone files on your system without having to cd into the zone file directory. Let's come out of zones and run this command. A quick way to see how each zone is configured is to use the -- list all zones option. This is the output. Of course, this is only a portion of the output, because the listing for all zones is more than we can display here. More likely, you'll just want to see information about one particular zone. Enter this command for that. So, the internal zone allows the SSH, MDMS, Samba client, and DHCP v6 client services. This would be handy for setting up client machines on your internal LAN. Any given server or client will have one or more installed network interface adapter. Each adapter in a machine can be assigned one and only one firewalld zone. To see the default zone, type in sudo firewall -cmd get -default. That's great, except that it doesn't tell you anything about which network interface is associated with this zone. To see that information, enter the next command as seen here. Let's take a look at the dmz.xml file to see what that does for us. So, go back to the zones directory. I made a mistake in the path. I will correct it and then run it again. Now open dmz.xml file. So, the only thing that the DMZ allows through is the secure shell. Okay, that's good enough for now. So let's set the DMZ zone as the default. It gives a warning that the zone is already set. Let's verify if it is done with this command. So it shows DMZ. You never want to modify the files in the user lib firewalld directory. Whenever you modify the firewalld configuration, you'll see the modified files show up in the etc firewalld directory. So far, all we've modified is the default zone, so we'll see this in etc firewalld. Run this command for that. We have a total of 12 files. We can do a diff on those two files to see the difference between them. I think I made some mistake in the directory. Here I missed another D after firewall. So, the newer of the two files shows that the DMZ zone is now the default. The next topic is firewalld services. Each service file contains a list of ports that need to be opened for a particular service. Optionally, the service files may contain one or more destination addresses, or call in any needed modules, such as for connection tracking. For some services, all you need to do is to open just one port. Other services, such as the Samba service, require that multiple ports be opened. Either way, it's sometimes handier to remember the service name rather than the port numbers that goes with each service. The services files are in the user lib firewalld services directory. This is what we get as an output. You can see all the files here. You can look at the list of them with the firewall-cmd command, just as you could do with the list of zones. The Dropbox-LANsync service would be very handy for us Dropbox users. Let's see which port this opens. On running the command, you will see the ports. It looks like Dropbox uses ports 17500 UDP and TCP. Now, let's say that we have our web server set up in the DMZ, with the DMZ zone as its default. Run this command. As we saw before, the secure shell port is the only one that's open. Let's fix that so that users can actually access our website. So enter this command. When we look at the info for the DMZ zone again, we'll see this. We see that the HTTP service is now allowed through, but look what happens when we add the -- permanent option to this info command. Let's do that and see what happens. When we run the command again, we see that HTTP service isn't here. What's going on? For pretty much every command line alteration of either zones or services, you need to add the -- permanent option to make the change persistent across reboots. But without that permanent option, the change takes effect immediately. This time, I'll add two services with just one command and specify for the change to be permanent. Enter this command. You can add as many services as you need to with a single command, but you have to separate them with commas and enclose the whole list within a pair of curly brackets. Since we decided to make this configuration permanent, it hasn't yet taken effect. But if we add the -- permanent option to this -- infozone command, we'll see that the configuration files have indeed been changed. Here you can see all the protocols. We now need to make that change take effect by reloading the configuration. Run the sudo firewall-cmd -- infozone = DMZ command again, and you'll see that the new configuration is now in effect. To remove a service from a zone, just replace add service with remove service. After this, we add port to a firewalld zone. Having the service files is handy, except that not every service that you'll need to run has its own predefined service file. Let's say that you've installed webmin on your server, which requires port 10000 TCP to be open. A quick grep operation will show that port 10000 isn't in any of our predefined services. So let's do that. Move to that directory and run the grep command. So let's just add that port to our default zone, which is still the DMZ zone. Run this command for that. Again, this isn't permanent because we didn't include the permanent option. Let's do it again and then reload. You can also add multiple ports at once by enclosing the comma-separated list within a pair of curly brackets, just as we did with the services. So let's do that. And of course, you can remove ports from a zone by substituting remove port for add port. The next topic is firewalld rich language rules. What we've looked at so far might be all you'll ever need for general use scenarios, but for more granular control, you'll want to know about rich language rules. Compared to IP tables rules, rich language rules are a bit less cryptic and are closer to plain English. So, if you're new to the business of writing firewall rules, you might find rich language a bit easier to learn. On the other hand, if you're already used to writing IP tables rules, you might find some elements of rich language a bit quirky. Let's look at one example. You can ignore this warning here. So we're adding a rich rule. Note that the entire rule is surrounded by a pair of single quotes, and the assigned value for each parameter is surrounded by a pair of double quotes. With this rule, we're saying that we're working with IPv4, and that we want to silently block the HTTP port from accepting packets from the 200.192.0.0/24 network. We didn't use the permanent option, so this rule will disappear when we reboot the machine. Let's see what our zone looks like with this new rule. The rich rule shows up at the bottom. After we've tested this rule to make sure that it does what we need it to do, we'll make it permanent. So, include permanent in the command and then run the command again. It's a success. Reload this. You could just as easily write a rule for IPv6 by IPv4 with IPv6 and supplying the appropriate IPv6 address range. Some rules are generic and apply to either IPv4 or IPv6. Let's say that we want to log messages about Network Time Protocol (NTP) packets, and you want to log no more than one message per minute. The command to create that rule would look like this. There is of course a lot more to firewalld rich language rules than we can present here, but you at least now know the basics. For more information, consult the man page. In this video, we learnt all about firewalld for Ubuntu systems. I hope you got all that. In the next video, we will learn about NF tables.